On the night of June 21st, 2026, something exploded in the Qatari desert that sent shockwaves as far as the capital Doha, 64 kilometers away. Journalists standing outside their offices heard the blast. They looked north and saw orange flames lighting up the horizon. What was on fire was not a small factory. It was Ras Laffan Industrial City, the single most important natural gas facility on planet Earth. The place that supplies 1 out of every 5 molecules of LNG the world burns. And it was supposed to be the good news story of 2026. The place that was finally coming back online after months of war damage. Instead, 13 people are dead, 66 are injured, and 18 are still missing. Today we break down what happened, what it means for global energy. Let's start with the facts. Why this explosion couldn't have come at a worse time. Ras Laffan Industrial City sits about 80 kilometers north of Doha, Qatar's capital. It is not just a gas plant. It is the world's largest liquefied natural gas export hub. When energy analysts talk about the global LNG market, this one facility is responsible for roughly 20% of all LNG supply on Earth. Europe, Asia, and South Asia all depend on gas that flows from this location. On the evening of Sunday, June 21st, workers were in the middle of restarting operations at a facility called the Barzan Gas Supply Plant, a unit within Ras Laffan that feeds gas to Qatar's domestic market. During the restart process, a technical malfunction triggered an internal explosion. Within seconds, fire broke out. Emergency teams were deployed immediately and managed to bring the blaze under control, but not before the damage was done. Qatar's Ministry of Interior confirmed 13 people were killed, all of them workers holding Indian and Pakistani nationalities. 66 more were injured and receiving medical treatment. As of the latest reports, 18 people remain unaccounted for, with search and rescue teams still working the site. An AFP journalist, standing 20 kilometers away, described seeing bright orange flames and a massive plume of smoke rising into the night sky, visible from that distance, in the dark, across the open desert. Here is why this explosion hit like a second disaster, not just an accident. Go back 4 months. On February 28, 2026, the United States and Israel launched strikes against Iran. Iran's response was to target energy infrastructure across the Gulf. On March 2nd, Iranian drone strikes hit Ras Laffan directly, forcing Qatar to completely halt LNG production and declare force majeure, a legal term that means we cannot fulfill our contracts because of circumstances beyond our control. Then came a second wave. On March 18th, further Iranian attacks hit Ras Laffan again, damaging facilities that Qatar's own energy minister said would take 3 to 5 years to fully repair, and cutting LNG export capacity by 17%. For the next 3 months, the world's largest LNG hub was sitting silent while a war raged around it, and the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway through which Qatar's tankers must pass, was effectively closed by Iranian control. Then, last week, finally, things started to look better. The U.S.-Iran ceasefire agreement was signed on June 17th. The Strait of Hormuz began reopening. Qatar's energy company told its customers it could restore 50% of production capacity within 1 month, 80% within 2 months. This was supposed to be the beginning of recovery. The Barzan facility was restarted just 2 days before the explosion. 2 days. It had been offline since December 2025 for maintenance, then further delayed by the war. The workers who died were among the first to bring it back to life. The question on everyone's mind the moment this news broke was obvious. Was this Iran? Was this sabotage? Qatar's energy minister Saad Al-Kaabi addressed that directly and quickly. His statement was emphatic. This was an accident and not sabotage or hostile in nature. He pointed out that the Barzan facility had been completely shut down since December 2025 for urgent maintenance requirements, long before the war began. The restart 2 days ago was the first time it had operated in over 6 months. Technical malfunctions during restarts of complex industrial equipment are not unusual. The CIA director had already told the U.S. administration this month that he had serious doubts about Iran's current capability to launch new offensive strikes, given how degraded its missile and drone infrastructure is from the war. And Hezbollah, Iran's most active regional ally, has been observing a ceasefire in Lebanon since April, under enormous diplomatic pressure. So while the timing is staggering, and while the geopolitical climate makes everything feel suspicious, the evidence on the table points to an industrial accident, not an attack. That said, investigations are ongoing. Qatar has not closed the door entirely on any possibility. And in a region where energy infrastructure has become a primary weapon of war, probably an accident will not fully settle global markets. Here's the part that matters most for people who don't live in Qatar. Let's talk about what one explosion at one facility actually does to global energy. Qatar is not just an important LNG supplier. It is the most important single-country LNG exporter on Earth, alongside the United States, Australia, and Russia. When Qatar went offline in March, energy markets felt it immediately. European gas prices spiked. Asian importers scrambled to find alternatives. Countries that had structured their energy security around long-term Qatari contracts suddenly had nothing. Now, here is the critical detail. Qatar's energy minister confirmed that this explosion was at the Barzan domestic gas supply facility, not at the main LNG export terminals. Qatar Energy said clearly that LNG export operations and port infrastructure were not affected. That statement alone stopped the initial market panic. But here is the problem. Global energy markets are not running on logic right now. They are running on fear. After 4 months of war, Hormuz closure, Iranian strikes on Gulf facilities, and the world's largest LNG hub going silent, investors and energy buyers are watching every single development with extreme sensitivity. An explosion at Ras Laffan, even at a domestic supply unit, is enough to trigger caution, hedging, and price movement. The deeper concern is whether Qatar can actually stick to its recovery timeline. Before this explosion, the plan was 50% capacity restored within 30 days. Now, with an active accident investigation underway, with emergency teams still searching for 18 missing workers, and with questions about the safety of the restart process, that timeline is in serious doubt. Step back even further, and you see why this story matters beyond just Qatar or LNG pricing. The Iran war has revealed something that governments and energy companies spent decades pretending wasn't true. The world's energy system has a catastrophic single point of failure, and it runs straight through the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, the Ras Laffan complex, the Saudi Aramco facilities, the UAE export terminals. Any one of these, disrupted, sends shockwaves to every country on Earth that burns gas, imports oil, or depends on stable energy prices to keep its economy functioning. Qatar's explosion is a technical accident, but it lands in a moment when the entire architecture of global energy is being rebuilt after the most disruptive few months the industry has seen since the 1970s oil crisis. Every incident, accidental or not, feeds directly into the anxiety driving markets, governments, and energy policy right now. 13 people are dead. 18 are still missing. The world's largest gas hub, which only restarted 2 days ago after 4 months of war damage, is on fire again. Qatar says LNG exports are not affected. Markets are watching, and an investigation is underway into exactly what caused the blast. We will keep tracking this story as the numbers and the details come in. If you want to understand what these global energy events actually mean before anyone else does, subscribe and hit the notification bell right now. See you in the next one.